Welcome to the first in a series of video conversations that Shephard Media and Clarion are launching collaboratively, so we can give you some of our views on how we see the defence sector developing in the next few months, and on how defence professionals and marketeers specifically are adapting their goals to meet the current challenges. Join us in the conversation on social media or via our websites. Today, I'm joined by Tim Porter, Managing Director of Clarion Defence Security. Hi, Tim.
Good afternoon, Darren. How are you?
Good, thanks. Tim, it's a difficult time for anyone involved in defence marketing. The landscape is pretty fluid and requirements are changing rapidly. I say it must be very difficult capturing the attention of defence audiences and crafting the right message. From your conversations, how are people rising to that challenge?
Well, we at Clarion, we've got people, some of our teams talking to the defence market all around the world. We've got our team in Brazil, we've got our team in the Middle East, we've got people in London, people in the States as well. So we're speaking to a broad range of marketeers across the defence sector. And I think you're right, it's right now is a very challenging time for any marketeer to be putting out messages to their target customers, never mind in defence, in almost any sector. But I think one of the things that is almost unique about the defence industry is the longevity, the pace, the long lead time, and the long build-up of relationships in the sector. Mm-hmm. So we, for example, are planning DSEI next year. We're planning a whole series of events next year. Our first major event is EDEX in Egypt, which isn't until December this year, mm-hmm. and we've already rescheduled a number of our European events, which your readers and watchers and listeners, now we're in this new environment, mm-hmm. will know as well. So that some of them are sort of 20, 30, 40 weeks away, mm-hmm. even as we speak about them. So whilst today, right now, is very tricky to put out messaging, the mm-hmm. planning for events which may be a year, half a year and a half away, that planning still goes on, because I think people are both rightly cautious about how they communicate with customers today, mm-hmm. but that planning for how they will communicate with customers in the future, and quite far into the future, does need to be done. And I think that's one of the unusual things about the pace of our events business. Mm-hmm. We are just naturally a long-term, long-cycle business with our the big global touch points in the defence calendar. The international events do happen on a 2-year cycle, and that pace has had a bit of a stumble, admittedly, over the last few months, but it is still carrying on, and there's a lot of people out there still planning for 2 years, events 2 years hence from now.
Great. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how DSEI shapes up for next year.
Well, hopefully, it will look sort of similar to my Zoom background behind me, but a little bit bigger. That's the aim. But certainly, from the customers that we're speaking to and our pace of bookings, we're not seeing any kind of fall off at the moment. It is a long way away. There's still a long way to go, but we're pacing slightly ahead of previous year's shows in terms of forward bookings. And I think where we're seeing a difference is that people are talking to us and engaging with us about planning their physical presence a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. And I think we're actually wanting to get out front foot on that as well. Clarion isn't just a defence trade show business. We're one of the biggest trade show and conference organisers in the world, and we operate in a whole raft of different sectors in different countries. Mm-hmm. So the global events industry as a whole is pulling together and starting to make plans to look at how our business operates going forwards. And I think where it's very easy, I think, looking from the outside to consider exhibitions in the same category as maybe sports events or music festivals or large public gatherings, but really we've got some very good controls. People apply to come to our events. We can control the number of people in the event. Everybody is coming for a business interaction, a business purpose. They're there to achieve some objectives and then go home. They're not there for a 3-4 day experience. The experience is part of it, but it's not the key thing. So I think we're looking at it saying there's a lot of things that we can do and we can learn from other parts of our business, other operating business units we have worldwide, and from the exhibition industry group think process or thinking process on how to operate events that we can then bring back into defence. And so we're, optimistic is completely the wrong word to say at this market, but I think, or at this point in time, but I think what we're doing is taking practical steps to look at the realities of how we operate and how we put in controls to make sure that people can still achieve their business objectives from our events, which is at the end of the day what they are for, what makes them tick, but do so in a way which is safe in whatever healthcare environment, whatever context that we're operating in by the time they come around again.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, looking at that, DSEI is still some 16 months out, I think, but it'll be the next...
I hope so, yeah.
So do I. But it'll be the next major European tri-service defence event. How are you seeing marketers deal with that long-term planning while being cognizant of the short-term challenges they're facing? I
think in the short term, the right thing to do is to take a bit of a hiatus. You've got to be very, very careful about what messaging you put out. It can backfire. Certainly our teams have been our marketing teams have been very careful about that. We've concentrated on putting out not only just supportive messaging, but doing things like making access to content that we've generated and recorded at previous events free. We're very much in the message of, we're your partners, we're helping you. What can we do to support you at this time, whilst still accepting the reality that we are an event company, and what we can do is always going to be limited to that sphere of business. Longer term, I think it's interesting. We've seen quite a range of different patterns. I think clearly initially when this started, there was some reticence and nervousness from anybody, as there would be, but we've seen that ebb away, and now planning, particularly for DSEI as the event of ours, one of the furthest away. I think we still have Bahrain after that in October next year as well. But for both events, people are starting to even think beyond. We're all very focused on getting out of lockdown now, but people are now thinking a year, 18 months away, we'll be in a new sort of environment. So we're seeing marketers start to work out how they can plan an effective presence at events for a future that is that far away. And I think there's a lot more things that people are now much more interested in around the preparation, the planning, the making that time at an event much more time effective.
I mean, one of the things I've sort of been thinking about in this current environment, both the virtual one and the future sort of social distancing one, is sort of the element of trust and the need for trusted partners to be sort of the interlocutors to deliver the right audiences and relationships for the next few months and probably into the foreseeable future. How should marketeers be thinking about that idea of trust and trusted relationships?
From a trust point of view, it's not just a question of building a relationship with clients that you're in partnership with them. I think both us and you in the publishing sector, ultimately our job is to support the marketing aims of our customers, your advertisers, your sponsors, our exhibitors. We are an extension of their marketing team, so we have to work with them and deliver what they want. But I think going forwards, because if where your business like ours and like yours has multiple touch points, we also have multiple touch points with the customer. And that means even in a time when things are difficult, we are maintaining what boils down to the quality of our data. Each time you're touching the customer, that data is being maintained from a facts and figures point of view, but it's at the VIP level, the senior military level, which is so important in this sector. It's being maintained on a relationship basis as well. I'm in a series of calls, and my team are in even more calls on Zoom, on Skype, on Teams. I'm sure there's other platforms as well. I think occasionally we even do phone calls, just like the good old days. But I think we're actually talking to a lot of our VIPs, industry partners, people in different MODs around the world who are also engaging with us. So I think it means when the events come round again, when DSEI is coming up, when Brazil's coming out next year for LAD, when we're doing Egypt this December, we will still have maintained those relationships with the end customer in order to bring them to the event. So I think the fact that, yes, we're only as good as our last event engenders trust. The relationships we've got engender trust, but there's an actual practical benefit in that an organization like ours with a global footprint and a full 2-year calendar of events, we just have more opportunities to prove ourselves and gain that trust and maintain those relationships with the end customer than maybe entities with a smaller portfolio.
I mean, I'm sure your experience is probably similar to ours in the sense that we actually almost have increased the amount of touch points because we're trusted. People are coming to us and asking us what we think, what our thoughts are on how things are developing in the defence market, how things are developing in the marketing space. What are our views? And I think in a time when it's challenging in terms of answers, being somebody who's trusted like that is nice to have that trust in you. And that's certainly something we're experiencing. I assume that's very similar for you.
Yeah, and I think it really underlines what an important part events play, because that's the opportunity, particularly in this global defence market. I always almost think the closest parallel is kind of the Formula One circuit, where the whole industry up sticks and goes to a different country every few weeks, and in defence that happens on a 2-year cycle. But those events are the point at which people do get to talk to each other and work out, get a feel for what's going on in the industry, and there's a very palpable sense people are missing that opportunity. So they are being much more open and talking to each other to try and get a sense of what's going on, who's being successful, who's maybe not, who's chasing new business. So I think that increased communication is actually a symptom of the lack of events, but for us it's a good indication that the role that events play in this sector going forwards. I think so. It's certainly something that's missing, but we're experiencing the same thing, and we're finding what's been really encouraging is that we found that the military, and also increasingly with a lot of our shows, we started to focus more on VIPs from the supply chain, the engineering directors from the primes of the tier 1 companies, even those sorts of people on what we would normally class as the attendee and the VIP side are very keen to engage with us because they want to work out how they can use the platforms that we've got in future. And I think what we're also seeing is that pre-planning component to us, it's pre-planning, is starting to tie much more in with our publishing partners and other online partners, whereas people will be going to events in future with a much more focused agenda and a much more kind of time precious agenda for whatever reason.
Thanks, Tim.
No, thank you, Darren.
For those of you who would like to join the debate, they can contact DSCI or Shephard Media through our social media channels or via our websites. Thanks again.
Thank you.